Hang on, there we are. Hello. So I'm about to go live. Doing ArtCat this morning. Going to be talking about this painting that we've got. So I might just kind of leave that there if I can, and so lean into it occasionally. I'm going to go live now on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch all at the same time. So we'll start that up. Hello everybody. So this is ArtCat. Welcome. It's good to see you. I've got all my windows open with the various voices and things, so what I'll do is I'll go back into those and turn them all down a little bit because you don't necessarily need to hear repeats of my voice. Basically today I'm revisiting the painting. So bear with me 1 second while I just close some of these other chats down. There we are, there's that one, and there's one more. There's Facebook, Twitch, and where's YouTube gone? YouTube, are you with me? Yeah. There we go. There should only be one voice now. Yeah. So, yes, revisiting this painting. About 2 years ago, started a project called Mammalian, and it was basically I was thinking about portraiture and lean forward. I was thinking about portraiture and how it's very hard to capture any personality or person just in one element of them. Numerous elements in one piece, and it got me into thinking about if I was to do portraits of people, what was it I wanted to say about them. And part of the portraiture for me is a conversation you have with a person, and it's a link between the artist and the sitter, and the give and take about how you both bring elements of them out and also elements of you out as well and put them together. And I have a lot of really good friends, and decided to base it on them. And every person's more complex than just their image. So what else are you trying to say about them in your portraits? What other elements are you trying to bring out? And if you try to curate it too much, are you projecting too much yourself? So I decided to base these mammalian portraits, this is the range of work that is called Mammalian, on them and what it means to each individual kind of person. What was it I was trying to say about it? So I was going to base it on a conversation, and so I literally had all these conversations with about 20 odd friends, sat down in various locations. I got them to choose a location where they felt comfortable. I got them to wear whatever they wanted. It wasn't a case that they had to dress up for it, because then you're going to have the portrait done. The portrait wasn't necessarily about them physically looking like they did on that day. Belfast Beatnik, hello, good to see you. And because I think, did I teach you when I was in when we were in Limavady? I think I might have done. Possibly. So yeah, I'm going live now on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. So basically when everybody puts anything up in the chat room, a chat bar in each of those locations, I'll kind of reiterate where you're from and what you're saying and things like that. So this is a conversation. It's a two-way thing. You can ask me loads of questions. I might bounce some of them back to you to get the conversation going that way as well. So yeah, this portrait based on friends that I've known for the last 10 years, something like that. And so when I met them, they chose the location, what they wanted to wear and things. And the only consecutive question that I asked each of them was if they were an animal, what animal would they be? And I've used an animal device in a previous work called Manimal, which is still an ongoing project. And as a descriptive and as a narrative to try and describe people's personalities, and which might sound weird, but we're used to it in everyday life. Belfast Beatnik, yes, I did. I sketched you in Cirque. I think I was I went to some of the life drawing classes that you facilitated. So good model, very good model. It's good to see you. So yeah, this project, we sat down and asked them what animal they would be, and I was really impressed by the amount of thought and care people put into their consideration about what it was, what was their animal. And it went past about the physicality of the person, and didn't, like, if they were tall, they didn't say I'm a giraffe. It was more to do with how they felt about themselves, and this is something I was getting to the core of with Manimal, was about the idea of identity and ego, and yourself, your id, and how you try to describe certain things and how you can project it on certain things. Al Gaston, who joined us over on Facebook, hello, sorry, YouTube. So they all chose their animals, and I said, look, your animal will appear in your picture in some format. It won't necessarily be a lifelike version of the animal. You will be you. I'm not going to swap you over for an animal head, which I've done for an animal. You'll have your face, but in some context you'll be there. So I didn't have any preconceptions about what the conversation was going to be about and how it was going to develop. We just had a conversation with some friends, and they were all up for it, and they were all really engaging. Some really good conversations. I've chosen some family members as well, and because they know me personally and what my work's about and who I am, they might have a more personal connection to me. So it's how they then build that aspect into the conversation. So it was interesting to see what would come out of it. So I didn't have any preconceived ideas about how this is going to work out. Oh, Les! Yes, I know Les. He's over on YouTube. Got a few people joining us over on Instagram as well. Got Hannah. Hannah, how are you doing? And Joe's Drawing Room. Good to see you. So this project kind of took on a life of its own. I did decide to do a pencil portrait of each of these people I met on the day, and of them at that time. So I took reference photographs, and some people felt very comfortable about the photographs being taken, and some were a little bit more self-conscious. But it really was about the conversation that was going to end up in the pieces. So all guns go in blaring. I did all the interviews, I did all the pencil sketches and things like that, put them all together. Started doing the paintings, did the first one, was quite happy with it. Went to do the second one, struggling a little bit. The third one, and was really failing a little bit for myself. And this is where I think your confidence, my personal confidence as an artist, started to chip in, and I started to procrastinate and do other stuff and do other little projects and do other little paintings and drawings. And my desire was to do these paintings, but there was something missing, and it wasn't necessarily the concept or the idea behind it, because I really still thoroughly was behind that 100%. But it was more to do with my confidence in how I painted and how I did compose things and things like that. I had ideas about each of the portraits fairly enough straight away after creating them, but I found a real wall when it came to the physicality of actually painting, and my techniques weren't particularly good. They're still not fantastic. I'm still developing them, but that's an ongoing thing anyway, I think, for every artist. I don't know if you think the same. We can talk about the difficulties and frustrations that you might have as well. This is part of our CAT is more of a conversation to try and help each other out. The reason why our CAT kind of started was back in COVID, when my real life drawing classes were cancelled. I set this up for students so we could still communicate and still keep everybody's enthusiasm going. But from there I found it's really helpful for me. So the conversation's a two-way thing. So the painting I've got up here is of a friend, Julie. Now this was about 2 years ago. I got to a certain stage and just stopped. And the paintings have kind of been hanging around in my studio for quite a while. But throughout COVID, through doing things like ArtCat, through doing different things like Portrait Artist of the Week that was on Instagram and Facebook, and little weekly challenges by other places, live drawing classes from various locations on the internet, it got me back into really knuckling down into some of the techniques and processes I did, it wasn't necessarily to develop my artistic thought process about the conceptual side of it. It was my technique of how I actually did something. So that's where I was at, and it's really been helpful. So artistically, what I've produced over the last year, say, a lot of the work hasn't necessarily been about producing my own artistic voice. It's been my own artistic technical development, and the challenge has been to project that onto some of the certain challenges like Portrait Artist of the Week, where you have a new sitter, you playing with mediums in a different way. So it's really kind of challenging myself, and that's, I think, a key thing to keep yourself engaged with what you're doing. Lorraine Van de Wink, thank you for joining us on Instagram. And Art and Home framing department as well as the shop. Good to see you there as well on Instagram. I know you've got your store up in Hollywood, and it must have been really, really tough during the COVID lockdown where you haven't been able to sort of trade as fully as you would like. But hopefully artists in the local areas that I think you're opening up again on Tuesday. Is it this Tuesday or following Tuesday? Your sort of click and collect service. So hopefully, the COVID restrictions will start easing once more and more people get their vaccines and the rates drop, so we can get back to using our favourite art stores. So this is where I'm at with the painting. And it's funny that when you have started something and stopped, it can feel like an even bigger uphill struggle to get started back into your painting again, and keeping that drive and enthusiasm in your work. If you're working by yourself, it can be quite tough. I found it's beneficial to use things like the internet, whereas before it was more of a marketing and showcase, and look what I've done, and now it's been much more communicative building of certainly an art community, but also being able to bounce your ideas off of people, and listen to podcasts and how people talk about art and how it makes you reflect back on what you do yourself. So that's what I'm going to ask you today is what are you doing? Tell me about this type of work you're doing, because I am generally interested to hear about what it is you're creating. Texas Kunde, hopefully I said that right. I just joined us over on Instagram, and Kerry Ann Lyons, thank you for joining us. Given to you all. So yeah, I want to know what you're doing, some of the challenges that you've had, how maybe you've got over them. I'll maybe reflect back on what I've done to sort of work through some certain processes. I can give you Instagram. So I've got the worst view of it all, but I can show you the bigger picture of this painting behind us. It's a 1 meter square, so it's quite a sizable canvas. Not by any means the biggest in the world, but where I would have worked necessarily on smaller pieces, this is possibly one of the largest ones I've done. Over there on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch, you've got the same view everybody else has every week. So nothing to change for you guys. Alex, you're asking me over on YouTube, so would you say that you only ever finish commissions as you say you have unfinished stuff around the studio? Yes, if it's commissions, it's something slightly different, because it's like an agreement and a contract type of way, where there's hopefully a symbiosis between the person who is your client, who is commissioning you to do something, and you as an artist fulfilling it. So the engagement normally has a time constraint around it, that the client would like a piece done for a certain event, or something along those lines. And it helps me to be much more focused and deliberate about what this thing is, because it's got an entirety to it. It has a timeline, it has an expectation about what the elements are that needs to be done, the content of it, the style of work that you're going to produce for it. So a lot of the questions are answered before you even start it. Whereas you're doing your own work, you're constantly musing, because the only person who's curating that is yourself. So I think it was where I was constantly questioning myself was putting me off from doing it. I have got studies and exercises that I've done prior where I'll tell you what's happening right now outside the window right now, outside the studio. There's a gazebo going up because we are allowed to have people around, to a certain number of people around, so that's certainly been erected. So there's lots of people, Galen's kind of staring in the window going, what's going on? So yeah, there's lots of work around in the studio that I've started and mused over, and they've been working exercises, and I don't think you have to worry too much if it's an exercise, an experimentation, for example. It has to be finished to its entirety or completion. If you've got enough out of it and you want to then get on with your main painting and main piece, do that. That's fine. I've got other works that are finished that'll sit around in the studio, and I'll reflect back on them, and I'll kind of muse over how I've done something that's worked particularly well and things that haven't gone particularly well, and what I maybe need to do to go back in and reinvestigate certain things and learn from them. So Alex, you saying over on YouTube, I suppose what I mean is, are you ever really happy with what you've actually finished? But yeah, I think I always get to a stage with a work where I'm happy where it is in my artistic process. I don't think anybody being creative, making something, doesn't go, that's it, I have painted the best painting I'm ever going to paint in my life, I might as well stop. Because that's not part of the process as being a creative person. You are constantly re-challenging or reinventing or looking at the qualities of your work. You're inspiring your own imagination by feeding it. And so I think, yes, I can be happy with my work at that time, but there is always growth. And yes, you could always fiddle with paintings till the cows come home, to the point of completely breaking them. It was an interesting conversation that a pretty good painter called Vincent Desiderio, and it's kind of like sometimes you've got to push things until they break. You've got to keep working just till they're awful, to realise where your limitations of your knowledge is, or your expectations are, or what you can achieve physically are. So I don't see them necessarily as failures. It's more a case of they're a good indicator, a good guide as to how to adapt your process or push your process in a different way, or learn new skills to develop your practice that way. So I think where I have been okay about work, not necessarily ecstatic, it's left me with a question of how I develop certain things. Vincent Draws, thank you for joining us on Instagram. Michael, good to see you on Instagram as well. So yeah, it's a good question, Alex, really good question, because I think where people are starting out, where their expectations of themselves are massive and their skill level is maybe not so big at the start, there's a constant frustration, and that frustration then feeds into, oh, why should I bother doing that again? Every time I do this, they become have an inbuilt fear into doing certain elements in their work, whether that be taking their time, or they just want to get it done quickly. That's often the case where I can see a lot in the drawing classes that take, where there's like a panic and a rush to get it done so they can take a breath. And rather than slowing down, taking their time over something, they probably have a better outcome. Now, it's not to say that doing slow, methodical, technical processes is more important in artwork. I'm not saying that at all, because the immediacy of mark making comes through experimentation, and through experimentation there's an awful lot of muck-ups. There's an awful lot of times when things just do not go right, and that's how you learn, that's how you progress. Whenever you're trying something out in your painting, you're making marks, etc., and sometimes those marks work wonderfully well, and sometimes you've got to really labour through and push through something for it to be completed. I think where my frustration lay with these pictures was I knew what it was I wanted at the end, I knew what the concept and the idea of the pictures were demanding, and I just didn't have that skill and that knowledge. And I had to go through that. I had to re-investigate the experimentation and the placement of things and the mixing of colours and understanding how brushstrokes might work and not work and some of the processes involved. And I had to go back and experiment again. And using this year has been kind of useful because doing certain things like the Portrait Artist of the Week, where it's fun. There's no expectation. These aren't for exhibitions. They're for no other reason than just to do them, which is sometimes a good place to be when you're learning. Don't worry about it. If it goes wrong, goes wrong. Learn from it, turn over the page, do another drawing, grab another canvas, try again, or maybe paint over it. So you can try all these different elements to it. We've got somebody over there on Facebook. Ellen Jane McCartney, thank you for joining us. Love your my honesty, and it's refreshing. Yeah, well, Eleanor, do you know what? This is something I've really kind of been enthused by during lockdown, is by listening to so many different podcasts now, art streams or art chats or whatever you want to call them, between different artists or on the different formats and things. I often sort of stick them on when I'm working in the studio, and it is the level of honesty. And I think there's been this really weird, I don't know if it's my own weird perception of the art world, but how artists are often projected through different formats like other galleries and articles and stuff. There seems to be like this perfection, like these artists know everything about what they're doing, and the vulnerabilities of being an artist are never really talked about. And what's interesting throughout all these podcasts and talks and things between each of these artists, there's a certain amount of clarity about what they do and how they do things, but a certain amount of honesty as well, where they just go, I just mucked it up, it was terrible, it was awful. And we have this idea that every artist does perfect work because they're being represented by a gallery, or they're being talked about in a magazine, so they must be amazing. You know, they're a professional artist, they make a living doing it, so of course everything that they do must be perfect. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And the honesty that you're talking about is something that I really love in people's work, and how artists talk about their work. There is no con. I think there's a fear from, my perception was there's a fear from the general public about the artists conning the general public into, you know, that the artwork was something that it necessarily wasn't. It's kind of the Emperor's New Clothes kind of feel. And I think it alienated a lot of people in the general public about art, about how can they engage with it if they don't know about art. And that's, again, not further from the truth, because when you listen to these conversations between artists and artists having a chat together, you know, talking about their processes, they have a real integrity and a real honesty about what they're doing. And I think that is a really interesting aspect, and how that comes out in their artwork. Now, it's not necessarily to say that everybody's concept has to be read by everybody 100%, and everybody has to love their work 100%. There's an acceptance that when you create something, some people just will not like it, and that's okay, because there are 7 billion people on the planet, and there will be an audience for you and your artwork somewhere. And definitely the internet and all these different social media platforms have given people a voice to communicate, which has been really encouraging. It's been a wonderful cathartic, symbiotic process, if I make a grandiose statement about it, about a collective nature of artists creating work, not necessarily with each other or for each other. It's been about how they do things for themselves, and people understanding and respecting it, and having a genuine interest in it. And say, for example, if I painted in a realism style but you were an abstract painter, it doesn't mean to say you have to be tribal about it. There's an honesty where people can go, I like the colours that you use and the process of how you hold the brush, the format and the scale of the composition that you're doing is interesting. It's not my thing, but that's interesting. I like to take a little bit of that and put it into my work. So there's a nice crossover now, and there's some breaking down of barriers, I think, between these things. So Marzipan Badger and Carla Heffley joined us over on Instagram. Good to see you. Hello. So today is just an informal chat about painting and drawing and some of the trials and tribulations that you're having with your work, and also successes. This is the other thing I was going to talk about, is that it's very easy to beat yourself up and sort of push yourself down about your artwork. It's important to acknowledge things that are working. There's a balance to it. You know, the idea that, especially, I've lived most of my life in Northern Ireland and in the north of England, where you have to keep your feet nailed to the ground because you can't get too big for your boots. So we're often undermining ourselves and pushing our successes down, so we're not appearing to be too big-headed. But there's an element there. If you keep pushing yourself down, you become squashed, and you have to answer what your successes are, and you have to acknowledge them as well and talk about them. I like this because it's working for me, and I feel happy about it, and this is something, a direction that I'm interested in. That isn't being big-headed. That's just acknowledging the direction that you think is for you, or feel for you as an artist is going in a successful direction. If you denigrate it and talk down about it, you're suppressing something that's good, and that will actually have a negative effect on your work. There's a balance between going, I am absolutely amazing, when you know that some areas of your work need development, and you know, the idea of I've heard it mentioned a few times from different places where, you know, just fake it till you make it, and I can't agree with that at all. It's just not in me to agree with it, because to me the idea of fakery is pretending to be something that you're not, or pretending that your artwork is something that it isn't. There's an honesty, and it's okay to be inquisitive and learning and developing your artwork. An emerging artist isn't necessarily an established artist, where you have to accept that there are limitations to yourself because of your knowledge or how long you've been doing something, but this also, you can use that as a source of guide or as an encouragement, a sense of direction about how you're going to use that, push it into your work and drive your work forward, and, you know, taste different flavours of things. And you don't want to be necessarily put in a box about what it is you do. So Yo Marzipan Badger, Michael, hello, and Angela, hi, on Instagram. Belfast Beatnik, if you keep pushing yourself down, you'll get squashed. True, lovely thing to remember. It is, totally. I think I was doing that a bit with these paintings, if I'm honest. I was happy with some parts of it when I first started. I was all guns going. The enthusiasm was there about that kind of excitedness. You know, you get you're going to be working on something, you're kind of excited about it and a bit nervous about it as well, but that kind of nervousness is a good thing. There's lots of that, but when it came down to painting them, I just felt a bit crushed and a bit deflated. I was getting lots of encouragement through people and some sitters that I'd sat with, and people talking about how much they loved them. But for me, when I was looking at it, I was really kind of knocked back, going, this isn't where I want it to be, and I can't do it. How do I do it? And then it becomes a worry and a doubt. You know, am I just conning myself? I need to kind of maybe. I can't pretend I'm going to do this. I have to wait and have to go and investigate it. I have to give myself time, basically. Andrew, you saying on Instagram you had a little bit of this earlier this week, yeah. And I think we all go through it. And what's better is to know that everybody goes through it. And if you share that experience, you can take the pressure off yourself that it's not just you. Because when you're working by yourself in the studio, you do honestly think, oh, maybe I just can't paint anymore. Maybe I just can't do art anymore. Maybe I'm just conning myself. I've got a bit of self-delusion here. I need to kind of really take the bull by the horns and work some things out. Um, Finn Straws, you're saying, I think fakery is applicable when you're starting from scratch, just to gain a grasp of things. I don't say fakery. I think, yeah, you can, when you're starting from scratch, you know where you are. And it's actually a more fun place to be sometimes, because everything is new. And to get a grasp on things, it's a case of trial and error. You try them out. Not It's often when you're talking to professional artists, say on their podcasts, or like this is me talking to them, I don't try and project what I know onto the stream. I am asking them questions because they might have an answer that I'm struggling with, and I like that honesty where you go, look, I find it very difficult to mix colours. What are the common problems you find when you're talking to people about the way they mix colours? And they'll go through all these different things, like they'll often use white to lighten everything, and that actually makes a picture look really chalky, or how they use warm shadows and warm lights together, and the painting starts to look a bit muddy. And I'll go, oh, well, that's kind of what I've been doing, that's the problem I've got, that's what I need to kind of fix. So I'd say when you're starting out, it's more important to be honest and don't fake, because it's going to be known by your peers where you are at in your art career. It's not to say that you might have an intuitive, creative style right at the very beginning, but don't try and connect that it's something that it isn't yet, because it could be there, and when you arrive at that point, you'll know the work is a hell of a lot stronger and fuller, better, because of your openness. And people are willing to help people who are open as well. That's the other thing. There's a lot of amazing artists out there who I follow, who do podcasts and do live streams and classes, where when they are sharing their information, they're sharing it because they want to help you. And if you're going, yeah, I'm fine, I'm great, I'm brilliant at this, they'll go, okay, well, I can see areas that that person needs to develop, but I'm not going to say anything because they're happy with where they are and they're okay. So you might lose that chance of getting that information. Andrew saying that yes, there's definitely a lot of self-doubt. Every artist goes through this. It is one of those things in an art studio when I think anybody working by themselves and for themselves, and they are what they create type of thing. There is that. Is this working? And I think you have to take this is where I will often take a step back and try and get a better observation of my practice, and that's something is an ongoing practice. It's a case where you keep on having to challenge yourself through these things. Our Bohemian Artist, good to see you. Professional Bohemian over there on Instagram, has a brilliant podcast on a stream on Twitch, and I've been watching your work. And just the way you were talking about colours, you're painting a face with two hands, and I just loved the kind of freedom that you talked about and how you were using colours, and you literally have to put the paint on to make the painting happen, and there was a real enjoyment through the process of you chatting and talking on your stream. And this is what I'm going to say to everybody else. Look, this whole thing is set up is a communicative two-way thing, so chat and talk as much as you can and want to. Because I'm no real different from you. Some people go, you're a professional artist, you must know more than I do. I might technically know more things than you do, but my artistic voice shouldn't be necessarily louder than yours, because you might have some amazing ideas that are going to develop to be amazing pieces of artwork. And just because you're at the beginning of your art practice doesn't mean to say that I'm a better artist than you, or you're a better artist. This is something that you should all develop, so definitely. Vince Straws, you get your perspective. Thanks, man. You're more than welcome. More than welcome. So yeah, Professional Bohemian. Go and check out his work. Go and check out his streams as well. So finding sources of inspiration. I don't know if anybody's gone through that creative block where you walk into your studio and go, what am I doing? And that cold sweat of fear and panic kind of descends over you. And people say, what do you do? How do you get through that? How do you make yourself have ideas? And I think that's where people find the biggest problem, is they're chastising themselves. And the biggest thing is to take a break, take a breath, stand back, and observe. Observing is key to your artwork. Not just physically if you're looking at something to draw or paint from, but to see your painting, to see your drawing, to see your process, to try and understand what it is you're doing. That's happening. There's a creepy ghost behind you. This is over on YouTube. There's a creepy ghost. Are you talking about this painting? It's a painting, not a ghost. Good friend, actually. So yeah, that was from IP Address Alcoholic over on YouTube. So yeah, observation is kind of key to you developing, because you fine tune it, and there'll be things that you do in your artwork that you won't recognise straight away, and it'll take your years into your artwork practice to maybe see them, to see and understand what elements you have there which are really strong and you just weren't aware of them because you hadn't really developed as an artist, but they might have been intuitive that you weren't aware of. And as you get better as an artist, or I say better, but as you grow as an artist, you can then observe and look back at your work and go, Jesus, I didn't know that was in my work all along, and that's a really key thing that I really enjoy doing, so I'm going to put that into my work even stronger now. So that reflection, of being able to see your work objectively, is important, but it's also something I think you have to kind of practice. It's not something that just comes naturally, certainly not to me. It's something I've had to really build upon over the years, and one of the ways of doing it, I hear an awful lot of artists get very frustrated and they rip the pictures up or they chuck them in the bin, and I don't do that. IP Address Alcoholic over on YouTube is asking, am I good at art? Subjective. You tell me. You might not like it, that's fine. If you love it, great. That's exactly what we're talking about today, is about your art practice and what you do. You thought you were good, but your teacher roasted you on the spot. Well, that's a good point. This is IP over on Instagram. Sorry, on YouTube. Often there is a disconnect between the education process and being an artist. It's not to say that the education process is wrong, and you're being the artist is always right. There's a fundamental function of art education, and that's an important element. You've got to be aware that they're teaching you a specific set of criteria for a qualification, a GCSE, an O-level, and an A-level. I say O-level because I was O-level back in my day. Whether it's for a degree, there's an element of criteria which they are setting you because of the course is set, and the teachers teaching that course have a certain function to deliver that course and those units. And what my frustration is between what I would see as a good art teacher and a bad art teacher. A good art teacher understands that and will encourage you to create your voice as well as your artwork in conjunction with the unit of course that they're teaching. And a bad art teacher will suppress you artistically and make you just do the same stuff that they've taught year on year on year on year, because that's a kind of a comfortable practice that they've got into. Yes, if you follow their criteria the way they want you to, you might produce the same work that everybody else is producing, that will look kind of the same, fill the same format, will get the same qualification, and will leave you to a point where you think you're attaining success because you've got your A, and then you go to the next stage. So say for example going from an A level to an art foundation course, and suddenly the art foundation course has different parameters and different set of criteria for their course, and where you think you're good at art because you've been congratulated by a teacher that is teaching only course content and not allowing you to do anything else. They're not teaching you or helping you develop as a creative person, and the creative aspect of you learning is very, very important. That's the key thing that will actually develop your artistic voice. So, Marzipan Badger, do you think qualifications are still valid in the art world? I think there is still a slight prejudice to it. You know, depending on the art school that you go to, sometimes that can have a certain cachet to it. When you're becoming a young professional artist, and you're going to galleries and you're going, well, I went to X, Y, Z, different place. Some universities and art colleges are amazing. They've got amazingly world-class artists teaching, and they curate their students. They help them develop as an artist. They help them develop as a professional. So there's certain aspects of studying and having that luxury of time to study and explore and experiment and develop, and with your peers around you, and in that world of going somewhere every day for 3 or 4 years, it can be really beneficial. The qualification is a sideline to it. It will show your progression as an artist. So if you're going into an industry, they may need qualification. So I'm not saying that every person going to an art college is going to be an independent visual artist. I'm not saying that. So sometimes, yes, the qualification is almost necessary for roles in society and jobs, etc. Say, for example, you wanted to become an art teacher, you need to go through an art college course and then become a BGCE and get your qualifications so you can become a teacher. And you could infuse thousands and thousands of young artists and be an amazing artist and educator as well. So I think there is a balance to art education, but I do get the point where I think there is so much information now, more freely available than ever before in art history, that will allow you to study. And it's not a case of studying in a formal concept where you're studying in a classroom with a set of criteria, but you'll have that drive to learn yourself. And the thing is, when you finish your university education or your college education, that aspect of it is key, because you don't stop. You're constantly pushing yourself. You're constantly finding your own criteria, your own qualifications. You're constantly sorting out new sources of inspiration. So, if a teacher is roasting you on the spot, as you were saying there, IP address over on YouTube, if your teacher is roasting you, what are they roasting you about? Is it the content? Have you been told to do one thing, you've done something else? Well, you need to kind of understand where you're at in your education. So if you're doing your GCSE and the project that you're doing at the time requires you to paint and you're drawing, then you're shooting yourself in the foot, because what you should be doing is playing and experimenting in the paint, because it answers both their criteria, the criteria of the course that you're doing, and it also expands your knowledge. You might not be great at it, but experimentation is really important. Jill Salvi, hello, how are you? And Ivor, thanks for joining us over on Instagram. So yeah, I think I've been certainly crushed by some educators, and I have been totally enthused by some educators in art. And it's not to say they're good or bad people. It's just that some have become jaded, and some are inspiring. Some are the ones that just switch on every light bulb of an idea in your head as they talk about their artwork, or how you do something, or how you look at something. And it's encouraging and supportive rather than dictatorial and standing there with a big stick to beat you with it. That was metaphorically, because you shouldn't be beaten by anybody these days. But certainly back in my day, you might have had a board rubber thrown at you if you were naughty in a classroom. Mana Sharma, thanks for joining us over there on YouTube. Good to see you. So we are live, just to let everybody know, we're live on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook and Twitch all at the same time, which is a bit of a juggling act. That's why I'm kind of squished down into the bottom left hand corner over on Instagram. If you've got any questions about the things that you're doing and going through, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear about what it is you're working on, or the art that you're interested in. You might not be an artist, you might just like art, and it's always good to hear from art lovers, because I think as art is a communication, and we do try to kind of project our ideas and our inspirations and our thoughts through our visual medium, or music or poetry or prose, whatever it is that you're doing. We're giving out to an audience, and it's how we communicate. So I'm always interested to hear from a general public who looks at the creative industry, creative world. What is it they like? What is it you like? Now, it's not to say that we will then go and rush out and produce all the artwork that you like. I think it's important for you to hunt things out that you like. Because often I think there's a role where we swap over from, especially when we're starting off, everybody likes to be liked and like to have success in their work. So what will happen is you'll be doing your thing, and you won't be getting into exhibitions. You won't be making any sales. Every time you put it up, people are not giving you good feedback on it. And then you suddenly see all the people who are painting rabbits. I've drawn loads of rabbits. But everybody's painting rabbits is getting loads of success and making loads of sales. I know what I'll do. I'll paint rabbits. And I think that's a problem where once you start chasing adoration or commercial success, that's a really dark alley to go down. Because by the time you've got to the stage of producing the work to a quality where it will get into exhibitions and it will get into galleries and stuff, and get into shows and get into sales, the audience has shifted and they're doing something else. And you might be very good at doing rabbits and nobody wants to buy rabbits anymore. So I don't ever say chase sales, chase adoration. It's hard to keep to your truth. So it's one of those things, how you combine those things and pull them together. I don't know if you've had success with things like that or experience of it. I think sometimes you can be producing your own artwork and suddenly it gets in the spotlight of things. It hits the right time, the market kind of swings around its spotlight onto the types of things that you're doing, and you can be successful at that time. And as it starts to fade, don't try and chase it. Stick to your core about what you do, because there'll always be an audience for what you do somewhere around the world. So Lindy Lloyd Art, hello over on Instagram. Pampy Fine Art, good to see you. And Sashi79, hello over on Instagram. It's got some lovely people and some really enjoyable conversations and questions coming up. This is a general conversation about artworks and producing artworks. I do sort of normal painting and demonstrating on ArtCat, but it's set up so we can talk about art and about what you do. Michael, you say you've been asked to do your first portrait commission. Brilliant, a friend's relative. I've never sold any of my drawings before, let alone doing the commission work. Any tips from you fellow artists on here? Well, yes, jump in, everybody, in every live stream that is currently going on. Give him some answers. If you're doing a portrait commission, sometimes you will, I'm guessing you might have been given a photograph to do it from. The quality of your references is often key, I think. If you can, do them yourself. If you're not confident in you might have the luxury of them being able to come and sit with you, especially during COVID. Maybe that you are working from a photograph. If you can curate that photograph yourself, so there's certain things that you're looking at, you can build it into your strengths. So it might be how you use light darks. You can compose lighting and things like that. you might not be great at photography, so you might know somebody who's good at photography to do the photograph for you. If they're sending you this has often happened with friends of mine who do an awful lot of animal portraiture, where they'll be given a picture of a dead dog from the 1970s that I had when they were a kid, and it's a really dark and dingy photograph of a dog that's sat in the back of a kennel, and you can just barely make out the shape of it, let alone the dog itself. And they say, can you paint Bonzo for me, and make it look like Bonzo, because you can't quite see him. And you go, I've never seen a photo of Bonzo. I don't know what he looks like. And they go, oh, he's a collie. You go, great, but every collie dog has different markings to it, so you don't know. So it's kind of managing their expectations about what you can do with the reference that you're given. So that would be the key thing. So you've been given a photograph and asked for a variety of samples. Yeah, well, it's good to understand of its portrait the posture and structure of somebody. So if it's of that person of the same time, if you get a picture of somebody, I don't know, from the 1940s, but a picture of them in the 1950s, and a picture of the 1990s, and a picture of them now, they're going to look like different people because their posture is going to be different, their face is going to be different. So making sure that their samples are relative to each other, time-wise. They could be their body language and their posture and how they stand or sit or hold themselves, or how they might, small little nuance things to look for. I often get people to tell me about the person that you want me to do the photograph of. Who are they to you? What they like? And I have a conversation. I use those types of elements. There might be a funny story that pops up that finds its way into the portrait. So it could be about, we always used to call him Lord Muck because when he drank a cup of tea, he put his little finger out. And you go, I quite like that, because it makes it personal, it makes it of them. And I might have my portrait holding a cup of tea with a little finger out, because it's an odd acknowledgement of that person's relationship who's commissioning the artwork with the person you're doing the portrait of. And those little elements of stories and nuances are important to sort of pull together. Ben Man, hi, you're over there on YouTube, good to see you. Certainly I've had commissions as well, and you often get the one where people want you to beautify them. They might have a really interesting face, might have a big nose that you really love to draw, and they go, oh, can you make my nose look smaller? Can you make my wrinkles go away? Can you make all my grey hairs disappear? And you're going, you're taking all of the wonderful personality and interest of you away, and I can't do that. I'm not Photoshop. I'm not an app that you use on TikTok. If you want one of those, just use your phone. Use the app on the phone. Take a photograph of yourself with one of those filters on it, print it off, and stick it on your wall. I'm not being disrespectful. There's an element of, I think, personal worry that you're going to see them in a way they don't like looking at themselves. And it's something you can talk about. If it is a case that somebody, say, has a birthmark or a scar that they feel self-conscious about and they don't actually want that to be seen, get them to look in the other direction and do the portrait from a three-quarter view. How you compose it might be slightly different. Rather than having to change them, you can curate it in a slightly different way. If people don't like their wrinkles showing, what aspect of their personality are they asking for? This is the other thing. It's not just what is the function of this portrait. It could be, if you're doing a bank, I've discussed this before, I think, on some live streams, where if you're doing a picture of a bank manager, and let's say for his firm, it's not necessarily going to be of him in his shorts wearing a sun hat and sunglasses out on holiday. He's not going to have that in his office. He might, but let's say for this example, he's not. He will probably want, or she would probably want, her sat in a power suit behind the desk looking very corporate. So sometimes there's an identity of the portrait that supplies a function. So to find out what that is, if it's a friend of a friend, a family relation, and it might be something that somebody lost somebody, say for example through COVID, and they want you to do a portrait of a lost loved one. There's a sensitivity there that you have. So there's an understanding that there might not be the chance to go and photograph them again. You have to work with the references that you've got. But you might be able to go and say, visit their favourite place. So if it's a place that's near you, and it's so we can access, maybe you can go there and take reference shots of the place itself to understand what it looks like. So I'm thinking of a place where we would walk an awful lot would be Crawfordsburn, near where we live, and there's a waterfall, and lots of people have been to that waterfall, and it's a kind of a nice kind of spot to walk. So if you've got somebody and saying this was their favourite place, or it might be their back garden, to take some references that are from your life that way. Oh, my video's paused over on Instagram. It's back again. Sorry, a small pause there. Hopefully you're still with us. Is it Linny? Hello, good to see you again. And thank you for joining us on Instagram. So yeah, it's a good question. So yeah, any other tips that people have got, fire them in. And Michael was asking if people have just missed it joining, about he's been asked to do a commission. He's never done one before. Is there any tips? The other one is to not get hooked up on, this might sound really weird, the perfection of detailed likeness, but it might be the attitude of the person, and you can change up your painting style, change up your approach to it. If they're a bright, vivacious, bubbly character, and the photograph reference that you've got is of them on a very grey day wearing a rain mac, it won't necessarily say who they are, so you can change the colours and the approach of it. When you're drawing them, look for the basic shapes so you can get the structures and the likeness that way. Details can come through your rendering or your mark making. It doesn't necessarily have to be photo-like to be a good portrait. Find out who's the portrait for. Is it the person who's commissioning it, or are they giving it as a gift? If they're giving it as a gift, who's the person that's going to receive it? What are they like? What are they about? What type of things do they like? Any more information you get, the better to work from. If you're working from pure isolation, without knowing what it is, it's kind of like a hit and miss thing. I've done one before. This was very early on in my career, where I was given a portrait to do of somebody's baby that was just born, which is fine, and I did the portrait of it, and it was quite a close representation to the reference photograph that I was given, and it was fairly accurate. There's no denying it. But it wasn't the best looking baby in the world, without being rude, and it was very difficult when the mother got the picture and she went, well, it looks like a Cabbage Patch doll. And I was like going, look, I want you to be happy. I think there's some of the difficulties about babies is they haven't quite grown into their face yet, or their personality, and the love that you have for your child is not going to be reflected in any painting that can be done. And I'm only going to reflect out what I can see. So what is it you'd like to have in your portrait? And I did that conversation after the fact. I think it'd be a conversation I have before the fact, if I went on from there. Like you were saying on Instagram, it's great advice. Yeah, it's friend's grandfather who's passed. Yeah, so I'll ask a friend about his life, etc. Yeah, personal traits, definitely quirks, all part of the learning, all part of his story as well. And especially there has been quite a few people I've seen who have had these commissions, and it is terribly sad, but it's incredibly warming as well about people that we want to celebrate their lives in such a way. It's a wonderful thing to do, because that will always be with them. It will definitely mean something in a very visceral way for them, and their family, and the friends who knew him. And they'll all see something slightly different in the picture, and it doesn't matter how technically good you might be. I think if you're honest with it about the direction in which you're approaching it, and why you're doing it, and why you've done certain things, that'll come across. You do those things, it'll be fine, it'll be successful. But the conversation is an important one to have, rather than can you just do this picture and just copy it. Because yes, you can do that, and that's technically sometimes all people want. They just want to see it done in a real sense. But sometimes you can expand upon that and build a real good piece of artwork into something, and you'll be engaged with it an awful lot more as well. It certainly takes on its own little gravitas. There's always things that will trip you up about. You've never drawn a tree before, and the tree's in the background, and it's his favourite tree, so now you have to draw a tree that you've never drawn before. And you just take it back to the basic steps of, okay, what shape is the tree? What are the textures? I don't know how to do those textures. I'm going to experiment how to do those textures of that tree. And you play around and you find out how to do it, and you build into your confidence, and then when you go to do the painting or the drawing, you know how to do that tree. So you can always break it down into these elements. So don't look at it as its entirety of an ended painting as the be all and end all. It's often sort of the process will get you there. Yes, definitely it's all part of learning, definitely. So hopefully that was helpful to you. Yeah. So what I'm going to talk to you about is, if we're going to move this around a little bit so you can see, I reviewed. Hopefully you can still hear me. I was reviewing this picture, and there's elements I like about it. There's definitely conceptually stuff I like about it. It might be a bit dark there. It's quite dark painting. There's quite a lot of dark backgrounds and stuff. But as I got lost into the painting, I was losing myself in the structures of it, and also the qualities of the painting that I was doing. Some areas were painterly, and some were very illustrative. It started to lose its consistency, and through that started to jar a little bit with what I was doing. So I don't know if you can see, there is a horse and a hand holding the umbrella, and a face, and the umbrella itself, and there is this sort of landscape behind with a crossroads in the back of it, and there's lots of different elements within it. And I was reviewing it and looking at it going, I know there's something wrong with it, but I can't quite see what it is, and it's the physicality of it. Now this was my friend that I had reference shots of, and we had a great conversation. I knew what this painting was going to be about and how I was going to compose it, but when it came to painting it, things weren't quite gelling right. It just seemed a bit stiff and a bit overly constructed, and I want it to appear as natural, like how she's holding this horse is a natural occurrence. So things weren't working out quite too well. So this horse, I know the horse's head, the portion of this of how I was sort of changing in the latter stages of the stage it got to. So I know the horse's head looks like messy at the moment, way too long. So I knew that was starting to change. The way I'd had it balanced on her arm wasn't looking great either, because it looks like he's about to drop off. It's like standing on her feet there, not really standing on her arm. So what do I need to do to this horse? If I need to make this horse look like it stood on her arm, these legs need to be on that arm there. This arm's wrong, because if you look at it, if the elbow's here, that form's only that long. If you swing that down, it's way too short for her body. So the length of this arm's wrong, the size of this horse and the angle of this horse is wrong. When I looked at this arm here, it's a nice pattern of the hand Lovely. Problem being, it's way too small for the size of her face. So that has to change. Also, how thin and small these wrists are meant that it would probably stop about there, but her elbow comes down to about there because that's the size of the figure. So, proportionally and figuratively, there's some nice little bits of painting, but they were wrong. Excuse me. So yeah, you have to... oh, sound? Oh dear, sound. Is the sound working now? Is the sound working now? So, we've got a problem over on Instagram. I'm back. Okay, cool. Right, I don't know where you heard up to. What was I doing at the time? I was giving you a little tour of this painting and things I have to change. So, basically, a recap would be proportionally there were some nice elements of painting, but none of them were connecting. Lighting was wrong, colours were wrong, the physicality was wrong. Oh, you missed my description of what was wrong. Okay. So I was talking about this horse that stood on a hand. It doesn't quite look like it stood on a hand and an arm. It's kind of falling off. The scale of her wrist to her elbow here was too short. So if you swung it down to be beside her body, it would be too short up in the air. The scale of her wrist and her hand, it doesn't have to be a little bit bigger, but it does need to be a bit bigger because of the size of her head and face. All of these things are connected in the picture that I was kind of painting them in isolation because I was nervous about them and not connecting them. When I stood back, there was some, they were okay individually, like as an underpainting, but collectively they're just something that was jarring. And it started to make her look a bit wrong. All the colours were different. Colour of the hand's different from the face, face is different from the other hand. And because I'd painted them on different days and with different paints and different colours, I wasn't thinking collectively for the painting itself. I was just thinking about the challenge of doing this hand, this face, this hair. It's still very much an underpainting at the moment. It never really got done to its finished state at all. There's some structures with this umbrella. It's like a lace umbrella, but I wanted it to look like it was illuminated from the inside. So I was thinking about the structure. The structure's kind of disappearing into the darkness. But there's elements certainly with the rendering of this pattern, which is slightly all over the place, which needs to be refined as well. The composition, though, was interesting. I think I got the composition right about how this figure is standing in this landscape. But there's certain aspects with the perspective about there's like a crossroads that you possibly can't quite see there. This crossroads that's in the background would mean that she is about 120 foot tall, which is quite nice for the idea of the picture, but wrong for the pictorial content. I want it to look like this is her landscape. So there might be certain things I need to do. Do I need to just pull up this horizon line and have her in the landscape? Or can I work this perspective in a slightly different way that it feels like she stood on this ground? So as dark as it is, the sort of stuff in the background gives you believability. So I had to be honest with it. The painting was good on certain elements, but not working out on others. And I knew part of it was my painting process, so I had to kind of re-investigate it and really look at what I was not doing well. And it takes you to be honest with your artwork, definitely. When things aren't working well, don't just throw your pencils up in the air and just go, oh, that's it, I'm not good, what's the point? You've got to take a breath and go, okay, what is it that is not working here? As I said, kind of knew instinctively something wasn't quite right, but I was procrastinating about actually that process. And it's taken me a while to get back to it. So this was started about 2 years ago, and it kind of killed off my enthusiasm for painting the rest of the series, because I thought, oh, they're all going to be bad. And I talked myself out of doing them for a while. And I found different excuses, doing other stuff, doing other artistic stuff that was, more successful for me. And I think it was answering my process is what I do as an artist. And this was kind of like my, not this painting in particular, but the whole series of paintings were kind of like this annoying little boogeyman in the back of my head going, you haven't painted me yet, you haven't painted me yet, you're failing because you haven't painted me yet. And I was just like, oh, what is it about these paintings that I'm having such a problem with? Because it's not the people, I love them, these are my friends. I am enthused still today about the project itself, today as much as I was when I started it. It's about how you get over that hump, that challenge of how do I paint this? How do I do this? I think I was talking a little bit before. Hello, I've got a few more people joined us there on Instagram. It's me, Big Al again, joined, and by Megan McCann, hello, and Pretty Deadly Nature, hello. So yeah, today we're having a general chit chat about your artistic process and what you're doing as well. I've been talking about my processes with this project, which was started about 2 years ago and then just stopped, and it's how I've had to get back into it again and get over the hump of that wall sometimes that you hit in your art practice. So Deadly Nature, hello, that's lovely to type and say hello. The other thing I was going to talk about was where you hit a dry patch, a writer's block, a creative flow block, whatever it is. You have to feed yourself artistically. So if you've been painting a series of work, for example, say it's teacups, I'm just using that as a random choice. Kathy Williams, hello. Say you've been painting teacups, and you've painted 20 or 30 teacups, and you get very good at painting teacups, and people are buying your teacups, and you want to do something else and you just don't know what to do next. You don't want to look at another teacup. Your palette that you use, and you're kind of sick to death of it because you've painted every teacup exactly the same, but you painted them every one the same because they were popular and you had fun doing it at the beginning. If you are then hitting the wall where you don't know what to do when you walk in the studio, don't panic. It's my first tip. Do not panic. Feed yourself artistically. Go and look at art. Find out who is your favourite artist and what are they producing. What have they produced? Read a book about art. Listen to a piece of music that you love. Find the qualities in the work of others that you love. And ask yourself, is that there in your work? Concept-wise, understanding that concepts aren't just snapped out of the ether. You might have an idea, sources of inspiration can happen, but they often happen when you're busy doing something. You're busy working. That's the quote, isn't it? If sources of inspiration happen, find busy people. If you're even just doing painting studies, colour theories, textural experiments, going for a walk and looking at the places and the people around you, whatever your passion is for art, who are those artists that you're inspired by? What was it they were looking at? It could be the context of the time they were painted, the history that was going on at that time might have had a dramatic effect on the content that they produced. Could you reflect that back and paint something along the similar lines, not the same painting, but a similar aspect about culturally what's going on in your life? So you can help build your enthusiasm or help build your inspiration and find your enthusiasm that way. Often when you walk in and go, I must paint today and I don't know what to paint, oh my god, I don't know what to paint, I'm an artist, if I can't paint anything, what am I going to paint? Oh my god, I can't paint anything, I can't think of anything, you're filling your head up with so much stuff that's in the way, you're not actively seeking out what's going to help you. And I think that's the key. I have been surprised that when it comes to idea generating, that it's not the emphasis of helping develop ideas isn't necessarily the strongest element that is taught in early art education, and I think to develop that creative thought process is key to virtually everything. because the challenge is how you get over it. If you develop your creative thinking, you can get over any problem, any challenge, because you'll think of another solution, you'll think of another idea of how to tackle it or try it, and you won't mind failing at it, because that'll often set up you in the right direction to try again that is more successful. So I'd say it's development of your creative thought processes, your creative idea generating, and therefore if you develop that muscle, you have to keep exercising it. By the way, it's not a case of you do it once, that's it. You have to keep feeding it. So I do it by looking at lots of other artworks, listening to art podcasts, watching movies, listening to music, being socially aware of what's going on around me at the time. And little elements of all of these things kind of keep feeding me creatively, so that when I come up with an idea about how to do something, I find another solution for it. With this one, I think my problem was confidence, and that's the other thing. Well, it's not necessarily I didn't have the ideas to do the painting, it's my confidence of doing something. And that lack of confidence was fear-based, I think. And it's something I have tackled always, and I think a lot of artists have, where you become self-deprecating about your artwork and your process and your skills. You judge yourself harshly against your peers, and you can set up barriers and roadblocks in your own head that stop you actually progressing. And the biggest thing, the way I found around it, is just be nice to you. Be nice to you. Be nice to yourself. And think about it this way. If one of your friends was having the same problem, or the same issues, would you talk to them as harshly as you talk to yourself? And the answer is probably no. You'd probably be very supportive, very thoughtful, considerate about how they do things, considerate about their feelings, be encouraging and supportive. And that's what you need to do for yourself. That often gets you over that hump. Because building up your resilience to facing issues, feeding yourself with lots of sources of inspiration, can get you over the problem of not having knowledge of what to do next. Sometimes you have to curate your visual language, your story about the concept of whatever it is you're working on. And it's not a one answer feeds all. It's a case of you've got to try lots of different things and feed it along the way. Breeze, hello, you're over there on Twitch. Good to see you. Just to let you know, we're streaming this sort of live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch and Instagram all at the same time. So I've got a few other people joining us on Instagram. It's good to see you. Art, Anna, Natasha Coates, and Janton New Van Valdezum. If I read your name out incorrectly or given it a really weird pronunciation, I apologise. Slightly dyslexic, so I'm reading stuff. I've really letters are bouncing around all over the place. So yeah, apologies. Stay with us. So again, I think that's something that I was aware of as well. That I've got a creative brain because I've had to think about things in slightly different ways. So if it came down to writing something down, rather than trying to find sort of battling with one word to write down, I've thought about an alternative versions of that word, or different, like a thesaurus. I have to come up with another word that means the same thing. So it's maybe be more creative thinking about writing things down. So that's kind of finding a problem like being slightly dyslexic. When it comes to actually finding a solution to it, that creative process is important. As a way of getting around it. So Alex, you're just about to ask us a question over on YouTube. Should you say that if a person does something? Okay. It kind of stopped half sentence, but I'll just write it again, Alex. It's not a problem. Take your time, and we'll get to it. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge, and it's a constant challenge. But don't see it as a massive mountain to climb. That's the other thing. Going back to the story about Vincent Desiderio, I was listening to him with a podcast with John Dalton on a podcast called Gently Does It. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. And he had this painting called, I think it was called Cocaina. It was about the land of plenty, and it was just a huge canvas, all these teacups and plates, and it's a beautifully immense picture. And people say sort of saying, well, it took me 10 years to paint it, not literally 10 years to put paint on canvas, 10 years to paint it, but 10 years to paint it, because he kind of did it in its monochrome format, the underpainting to it, and it sat in his studio for 10 years, and it wasn't until his technical expertise got to the stage of where he knew what he wanted, but his technical skill wasn't quite there enough to do it. And as he developed his technical skill doing paintings and artworks and things like that, all the way through his process, he then knew how to paint that painting, and then painted it. But it took him a 10-year journey to paint that painting. And I quite like that story, that, yeah, you can get to a stage with something, as long as you go back to it and finish it. That's the key. Don't procrastinate. Get it done when you've got the skills. And don't be fearful over your skill set. Try it and see. One of the key things that I've learned over this last lockdown, or over the lockdown, is put the paint on the canvas and then find out. Paint it and then see. What's the worst thing that's going to happen is if I painted this and finished it and it wasn't any good, I could learn from it and I could paint it again. And I might have finished it by now. I might have learnt the things that I was worried about, my paint quality, my paint colour mixing. Through the process of painting and putting the paint on the canvas, I would have learnt those things out if I'd just continued to do it. It's continuous. So yes, you'll do things and they won't work out quite so well, but if you continue to do them, put the paint on, put the paint on, put the paint on, you will eventually learn what it is you need to do. I just stop it. By stop doing your artwork, it's you're not going to produce anything. If you're not producing anything, you're not learning. You're not pushing your work forward. You're not doing the next picture and the next picture because you just stopped. So do it. It's okay if it goes wrong. Because we have this idea of perfection, I think, as artists, where if you don't do the best piece of work ever, there's no point. And that's not true. It's not true. It might be the best piece of work that you've done to date for yourself, and the next one might be better, and the next one might be the one that pushes you, is a real challenge and makes you work really, really hard into developing your skills. Leo Art over on Twitch, hello, good to see you too. So we're just having a general chit chat today about art and processes and some of the stumbling blocks that we've all had, and some of the successes that you can have in your artwork are key to acknowledge. That's the thing I want to kind of get across to people, that there will be elements in your work that you like, and don't throw them out with the rest of the painting, that if it's a bad painting, everything is bad about it. There will be elements of it which you are nailing and hitting on the, getting the mark right. Stick with it is the key. Sometimes you've got to work through, try it out, didn't work, take the paint back off. It's all painting, it's very easy. If it's just drawing, you put a mark down, rub it out. Put a mark down, not in the right place, rub it out. Put another mark down, not in the right place, rub it out again. Keep moving it around until it is in the right place, and then move on. It's slow, methodical chore, grind, graft, process. But as you do more of it, you become more tuned to what it is artistically you want to say and do in your artwork. That you're not having to second guess yourself, because you have confidence, and you build confidence up by doing. You build confidence up by having a different approach to failures in your artwork. So where failures can be distracting, disheartening, take you away from actually getting on and producing work, look at a failure as just a learning experience, as going, okay, this didn't work. What went wrong about it? What was it that didn't work? How can I get across this? How can I get around this? And this goes back to that question of not having inspiration. If you have a creative thought process about how to tackle problems and issues, you'll be constantly feeding yourself with another idea. Write them down in a sketchbook. I have a sketchbook full with ideas about paintings and drawings, a lifetime of which I'll never get a chance to paint and draw. But I'm never lost for a source of inspiration because I've constantly got it there going. So I write it down in the book. Make a little thumbnail, pencil sketch of literally stick figures if it's a compositionally idea that popped into my head. It might not be relevant by the time I come around to paint it, and I go, oh, it's not relevant. It's not relevant for me to paint this painting anymore. But it was a good idea, and it might spark off another idea for another painting. So you can be your own feed for inspiration, but keep writing them down, note them down somewhere in a place that you can go to. Write it down on your phone. I have heard a lot of musicians do that, where if they have an idea for a lyric or a tune, they'll hum it into their phone and just keep it. Or they'll write a lyric down and keep it in their notes. So when it comes to actually writing a song, they'll sort of scan through. Go, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I was feeling really sort of positive that day, and this is an upbeat song, and that kind of fits. Great, I can use that. So if you feed it and work it, it doesn't even feel like work. If you do it habitually, it becomes part of your process. You won't have to see it as a chore, I don't think. It'll kind of fall out of you. And when you see very prolific painters, they're putting no barriers in between them actually doing the thing of creating. They're making it as easy as they can for themselves. They've got their setup. They'll have things around them that they like in the studio, your environment. If your space that you have to do your artwork isn't necessarily an art studio, and it might be a kitchen table or something like that, curating time to do it. Now that time might only be a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon or something like that, but you curate those 2 hours, that is what you do in those 2 hours, and everybody knows in the household that's what you do in those 2 hours, and not to come in and try and make food around you while you're doing, just to leave you alone for 2 hours to do it. So if you curate that time, you're going to be more productive, because that time's more precious to you. You can spend your time in the rest of the week feeding yourself artistically. So one of my tips was when I used to go, I hate going shopping to Tesco, or I go, Tesco's and other supermarkets are available. Not that I hate Tesco's, I just hate food shopping. It's laborious and boring. And I do the food shopping every week, but I've decided quite a while back ago that I can do it with a pair of headphones in, and I can listen to an art podcast as I do it. It makes it go so much easier. I'm getting something else done. I'm being functional and doing like real life stuff as well. And it's how you balance those two things together. So that'll be my top tip. If you've got any top tips, how to get through trials and tribulations of being an artist. If you've got any problems with yours, talk about them now. Let's get them out in the air. Let's find solutions for them. If I don't know the answers, I'll go and find out and ask other people how to do them, how to get around it. This comes from a part of that thing I was talking about how you generate ideas. And I think people are scared to put down what's in their head. It's a fear. I certainly see that with kids, where they want to get the right answer and what they're thinking might be wrong, so they self-edit and they don't put all the things down that is rolling through their heads. Whereas if you're generating ideas, literally if you're brainstorming, you allow your brain to say anything. It doesn't matter. There's nothing's off the table. You just write it all down. And what you can do is edit it after that. So things that are completely irrelevant to what you want to do, the types of things that you even like. Often you're given a task, or you're given a title, which is as bland and as open as anything. So it could be about, a favourite one would be big and small. And if it's, somebody go, oh God, I have to do a thing called big and small. Or I'll look at small things and I'll look at big things. And you go, yeah, what else? And they go, I don't know. I don't know what else to do. Because they've limited themselves down to something that is big and small. Well, I always say, look, turn it around to the things that you love. What is it you like doing? Skateboarding. Okay, skateboarding. What do you love about skateboarding? The tricks. Okay, what's a big trick? If you're looking at competition skaters, what is a big trick? And they'll start telling you about all the different high scoring point tricks. And you go, okay, that's your big. Now small. what is it about the skateboard? What, what that's like? Oh, like the wheels and how they move around, and the bearings in the wheels. And you can go, hey, the bearings of a wheel is going to be quite small in comparison with a skate park. That's a small, and you can build these two elements together. If you make it relevant to the things that you love and like, or things that inspire you, or make you want to say something. It might be something in reaction to something. That's what you should be working on. How you build up your ideas, you feed them. You don't restrict them. Don't do things that if you're not inspired by it, like it, love it, have an opinion on it, is dull as dishwater. Don't create pictures about dull stuff that you're not interested in. I know that sounds really simple, but you often see people going, well, I'm going to paint a bowl of fruit. You go, okay, do you like fruit? No, I hate fruit. Well, okay, so why are you painting a bowl of fruit then? Oh, it's because, it's different sizes and stuff. Okay, what other stuff do you like that's different sizes? Cakes. Paint cakes. Get the big cake and a small cake and eat those. Find your solution to your problem by being creative about it. Don't just think that if you need to answer it for somebody else, that only looking at the basics of things is enough, because you'll come to a roadblock, and that's what's very hard to sort of feed your inspiration. If you've got no interest in something whatsoever, how do you feed your inspiration? Now, literally, you could give me, I don't know, this, like it's a bulldog clip, and I could find something inspiring about this in some format. Not because I'm interested in bulldog clips, but I'm interested in maybe the technical process of how you might paint it, or the narrative about where this could be in a composition, the types of things that I could clip this onto. You can be creative about any random thing. You can be creative about any concept, and it's yours to do it with. If you get frustrated with your work, what are you frustrated about? Answer some of the questions with a bit of clarity. Take the emotional beat up that you give yourselves, or I would give myself over things, and be kind to yourself is that key thing. And just ask yourself those simple questions, and if you don't know the answers, it's okay not to worry about them, but you might have some questions about how you go about resolving. So you can look at artists and go, how did you get your inspiration for this picture or painting? And listen to their story, and listen to the way they talk about it, and go, oh God, that is inspiring, I do like that. And if I was to reflect back and look at that and answer it myself, I would say this, or maybe that's my key, maybe that's my thing that I need to do. I'll try it. There's your inspiration. You're suddenly painting in your studio, or drawing in the studio, or doing your pure creative thing. That means something to you. So, Alex was saying as well over on YouTube, he's saying well done to Michael over on Instagram for his first portrait commission, and yes, congratulations, well done. Getting these first jobs are exciting, challenging, and there's a little bit of nerves that always creeps in as well. Set the nerves aside. Think about the thing itself. It's a portrait. It's a case of don't let these things be the scary. The fear of something. This is something I heard earlier on this week. The fear of something failing is basically putting yourself through the event twice, because you will think about the feeling, the experience, the sense of failure before you've even started. And if when you've done it, it does fail, you've actually gone through it twice. Nobody wants to go through it twice. Do it and see. If it doesn't work, learn from it and try it again. Don't give that commission out until you're happy with it. As in, not necessarily it's perfect and it's the best painting anybody's ever going to paint. Perfect for your artistic journey at this point. There's going to be certain criteria. The reason why that person's asked you to paint that picture or do that drawing is for the qualities of the work that you've done already, and they've seen it and gone, I'd really like you to pick you because there's somebody that they know, or somebody whose work they've liked and they've seen the quality of it. God, I'd really like that. what you do. I'd like you to do this picture. That's something to be commended. So well done. Jonathan Bink, hello. Good to see you over on Instagram. So yeah, we've been chatting mostly today. I was going to start doing a bit of painting, but I think the conversation is actually more relevant to actually painting this. And I think I'm going to be painting this over the next couple of weeks or so. Which is funny because it's been in my studio for 2 years. Got to this stage and stopped. I'm going to be painting this painting until I get finished, and I'm excited to paint it. I want to paint it. I've done one previously that you may see in the Instagram posts on different various YouTube, Twitch and places. There was another mammalian portrait, got to a similar stage. In fact, it was just the underdrawing of the painting. It had a little wash over the top of it and nothing else. And now that's fully completed. And I was learning the process of painting it as I was doing it. Still, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There's elements in it which I know that I will develop on in 10 years' time through skill, through learning. But I can't grab that experience from 10 years in the future and suddenly put it into my work right now. The importance of that work is painted now. It's important because of that legacy. It will eventually be the thing that leads me to paint the next painting and paint the next painting, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that constant feeding of practice will always improve your work, and there is no stop to that. There is no end to it. There's no point waiting until I die to do the painting, because that will be the end of my creative process. Knowledge bank and expertise level. There's no point waiting until that point to paint the paintings. Do them now, and allow the worry about if we've got to be good enough for other people to muse over. You can acknowledge about what's good about your work and what needs to develop, but you need to do the paintings first. You need to do the drawings first. Lindy Lloyd Art, you're saying, could you show us how you get on with your alterations you make on the painting? Yeah. So, first of all, I said it was about reviewing and acknowledging what you need to change on it, and then you can work out how you're going to tackle them. You can look at you can write it down in a list, or you can understand what all these things need to change, and you can make adjustments to them collectively. So I'm not going to paint right now, but over the next while I will be painting this. I'll be probably doing this next Saturday as well. I'll be doing the painting of this next Saturday. It won't be so much. Well, there's always lots of chat on ArtCap. But what I would say is I'm going to be looking at this painting. Let's try and find a brush. Structurally. So I need to look at this, and remember I was saying about this elbow. It's not long enough. Like if that was her wrist and it came down, it would reach there, and that it should reach about there. Therefore this hand either needs to be longer, or this elbow needs to go back. If this elbow goes back, this arm comes down straighter, which might twist her hips around a little bit as well, because otherwise if her hips are facing forward and her body is facing forward and her arm is twisted back, I start to physically put myself into the posture of these things and go, that just feels really uncomfortable. If her elbow is really that far back and her body's twisted that way and she's looking down, I've got to have it that the arm comes out. So if the arm comes out, it's more outstretched. It can't be straight down here. If this comes out, where does it come out to? It comes out to about there. So I'll start to literally, if I'm adjusting this now at this stage, do a little bit painfully. I'll paint over what I've got. I'm doing the thin little solution of a darker paint. So if this is one shoulder here and that's the other shoulder there, that means these hips need to change. If she's got a body slightly twisted, that's one shoulder there, so I've got to make a decision. Where I've been painting this thing in isolation in bits, they've all got a slightly different type. I've conjoined them together, but then the physicality of it just doesn't work. There's something nice about that, but her arm might come out here rather than there. So it coming out further forward, coming out over here, might be more interesting, and I can try that out. So it's like sketching back over the painting again, if you can see that. So I've been sketching this kind of, and the arm coming out that way. So where this hand is here, I might need to repaint it down here, which physically wise looks like it's part of her arm now, and it makes more sense to do that. The size of the horse, if the horse is now here, that it stands upon this arm. This horse here wasn't, it was stood in her hands, but it was kind of looking like it was floating in midair, not quite sat on a jacket. So if this horse is now down here and standing here, it's going to do certain things to the horse and how it's going to be standing. So I'll literally sketch back over the painting. My sketching stage will start all over again with the painting that's already there. I can then paint over certain areas again and repaint them back in where they should be. There's a good thing about oil paints, that you have got that flexibility to do that. And it may be a case of, if you're using acrylic, that you have to paint the whole thing white and sand it down in that area and then repaint it over again. You might get away with that you paint quite thinly anyway, so you might just need to take it back to a base colour to then redraw, repaint back over the top of it. Sometimes with oil paints you can actually take the paint off by scraping it if it's not too dried. This has been dry for nearly 2 years, so the fact of me using a painting medium to thin it out and rub it off isn't going to work. I've got to paint over it. So there does come a point, I think, in any painting where if there's so much surface difference, texturally wise, done to your picture, or there's so much graphite put down on the page that any rubbing out is just not going to work anymore. The paper might start to degrade and things like that. That it's okay to grab another canvas and to grab another piece of paper and repaint it from scratch, but you'll paint it to the same stage a lot quicker and more efficiently because you've worked out your problems through what you would normally call a muck-up, or you've completely failed in doing that first painting. Has been an important lesson, and it'll help you complete the painting on the second canvas or the second piece of paper. So yeah, don't let turning over the page or grabbing a new canvas be a sense of failure. See that as just a continuation of the same painting. It's no different, absolutely no different whatsoever. It's good to have that painting around to remind you, oh yeah, I remember when I did that and that didn't work out so well. I'm not saying you have to go into the studio and review them every single day, but you might hit the same stumbling block again. It will remind you, and you can go look at it and just remind yourself of what you did to change it, to improve, to develop your work. But always, looking for that source of inspiration is a kind of is an ongoing thing, and it's not a job. It's a pure pleasure. Make it your friend, make it a part of your routine of your life. That it's never a chore to look at something wonderfully inspiring. We judge ourselves an awful lot starting off, going, oh well, I'm not as good as them, and they're better at me, and that person's amazing, so there's no point in me trying that. Don't look at it that way. Look at it as like, wow, that's what I want to do. How did they do that? What thought processes did they go through to come up with that concept? That's amazing. What type of things are they looking at? What type of, and it starts the conversation with your brain to try and interact with what the creative process is that you actually like, and do those instead. That's the key thing to me. I think personally, if you've got a different opinion, I'm more than open to hear it. Talk about it here. Let's hear about what it is. Some of the ways that you've got over the problems of your creativity. I remember in uni I wrote my thesis on perpetual problems of a potter. My background's in fine craft design and I studied ceramics. One of the reasons why I was sort of saying about my sense of confidence as an artist goes back, way back, was when I was starting out. I loved art, I loved painting, I loved drawing, and never thought I was good enough to be a fine artist. I didn't understand it, the way people talked about it. My knowledge of art history was minimal. People seemed so much more experienced and worldly than I was, and I was fearful, and none of these things were conducive, and therefore I was not going to do that. I wanted to do something creative, and I was lucky that intuitively I have a three-dimensional brain, so I can make things with my hands, and I like the practicality of ceramics. And because I had more success in 3 dimensions than other people would have with 2, I found my route through ceramics. But I never thought I was cool enough, which is a terrible delusion on my part. It's not about being cool or trendy or whatever. That's not what makes art interesting at all. What I've learned through the years is I've always been an artistic person, and I'm using some of my strengths as a ceramicist, as a potter, that in 3 dimensions I can think about things 3-dimensionally, that when I'm creating them I can see them 3-dimensionally. I can turn them around in my head and I can draw them. I can use that skill into my artwork. Occasionally, like this painting, I get it wrong, but rather than beat myself up, I've had to pause, reflect, think about it, cogitate, re-inspire, re-investigate, examine, play around with the idea, come back to it and paint it. Part of the procrastination has gone back to that element of me being a young artist, learning and starting out thinking I wasn't cool enough. Like the painting's not good enough. Well, I wasn't painting, I wasn't putting the paint on the canvas to change it. That was the problem. And yeah, so sometimes you need to kind of feed yourself artistically, and also be a little bit honest with yourself about what is actually really important. If you were to talk to yourself as another artist, what would you say? Write those little notes down. If you've got any examples of what you've done to get over things, I'd love to hear it. Tell me a time that you've done a painting and you just thought, God, this is not working. Well, what did you do with it? How did you get over it? What did you do next? There will be a case where you look at things and go, no, that's not right, I'll turn it over. And you never show anybody. And you instinctively know what's not good about it. Now, I have heard people, as we said before, kind of will bin it, will chuck it out, have a bonfire and burn it all. It's a very cathartic process. That's okay if you've got the memory of why it went wrong in the first place. And you've got the memory of, if the feeling of that picture is depressing you because it's around, then fair enough, get rid of it. If the element of its creativity is the annoyance and the thing that is stopping you from doing any other artwork, fair enough. Excuse me. But yeah, if it's a case of shame, don't be ashamed of it. It's a part of your journey. It's part of your language as an artist as you've developed. If you have a look at most artist studios, not everything in there will be sort of museum grade. It's not done for that. It's done for the exploration of it, the fun of it, the enjoyment of it, the process of developing your language through painting and drawing. And some of them work, some of them don't. And you can review it yourself. Self-critical awareness is what we're talking about. And giving yourself a crit, being critical, isn't the same thing as slagging yourself off and going, you're terrible, you're bad, you should never paint again. It's not that. It's being clear and having clarity about what is it that's not working about this, what's working about this, both sides of it, the positive and negative. What elements would you improve? What elements do you need to champion and do again? If you're being much more even-handed with criticism about your own artwork to yourself, it'll be more inspiring than just beating yourself up every single time, because nobody wants to go anywhere and beat themselves up. So if you're going into your studio and every time you go in there you're beating yourself up, you won't want to go in that studio after a very long period of time of being beaten up. It become a horrible place, and all the feelings of being beaten up, you can imagine what that's like. So try that different process of being more cathartic about it being okay if you muck up. Try to understand what didn't work about it. Ask your peers, ask trusted peers, ones that whose opinions you can take. If you put it out in a public forum, a load of public are going to throw a load of stuff at you, and some of it's going to be relevant and some of it's not. And you have to use your own filter system at that point, I think, where if you're asking for people's opinions, it's only their opinion they're given to you. Even if you know it's not, the painting's not working, their opinion might not be right either. But what you can do is listen to it and take it on board, mull it over, see if it applies. If it doesn't, move on to the next point. You can always thank them for their opinion. It's what you do with it that counts. So if you go, like if somebody says, oh well, the colours, the proportions are awful in that, terrible, I'm not going to go, God, I am terrible at doing proportions, I will never do another figurative piece again, why did I bother, I'll go back to painting teacups. That'd be a shame. If somebody says your proportions are not quite right, look at how she's standing, if you're doing this, I'll go, oh yeah, of course, that's not how you actually stand or move or how you hold your hand. It would need to be over here because it can't physically be there as well. That's what's wrong with it. I'll change it. Can you see how the difference of approach to criticism or critique can really improve your work? Somebody might go, I love the way you painted the hands, but there's something not quite right about them. The colours are a bit out of sync. And I go, yeah, one's virtually orange and the other one's ghostly white. They're right. It's because they've been painted in isolation and it wasn't gelling together. So these are processes and guides basically that we're talking about. I don't have all of the answers. You will probably have far much more experience collectively and a knowledge bank of processes and ideas and approaches which is more valuable. So these things are good. If you can find more of them, do more of them. If you can find teachers and tutors online that are inspiring to you, use them. Find out about them. If you've got peers who are artists, have that conversation with them. Talk to them about artwork. There's often a fear to talk about it because we don't want to appear to be stupid. I've just fully accepted the fact I probably am, and it's okay. So if I can ask a really stupid question, it's probably the same question everybody else is wanting to be asked as well, answered. That I don't mind being that person. To go, what do you mean you use that medium with that paint? I've never heard of that before. Have you not? Everybody uses it. Really? Oh, great. Okay, well now I know. Your work improves. So, yeah, I would say do that. Have that mindset that if you ask a question, it's okay. If anybody was learning from you and asked you a question, it would be fine. You got to think about it that way. If you're getting asked often I've seen it on podcasts and classes before, where everybody will ask about the mediums that they're using, the paints that they're using, the brushes that they're using, and they go, yeah, well I'm using this brush and that paint and all the rest of it, and it's almost irrelevant. I say almost. Technically there might be a reason why they're using this particular brand of paint, because it's got higher pigment content or something like that. But generally, if they were using, I don't know, food dyes and makeup to paint their paintings with, you'd still be amazed at the painting that they did. The mediums come second to about how they approach about what it is they're physically saying. So they can tell you all day long about the mediums that they're using, and they'll normally write a list, a menu of things that they use, and they put that up in their on their web page. They might have a link to the paintings, the painting company that they've worked with to develop a range of paints that paint their paintings. But that's not necessarily what's interesting. What's normally interesting is how they use the paints, how they paint their paintings, how they develop their ideas, what they do to start off a painting, what they do to develop a painting, what they do to change a painting, the review and the process, what they're thinking about as they're painting it. What is it? Again, going back to Vincent Desiderios, he's a good conversationalist about art. If you want to really learn something, to stretch yourself, that would be a great one. But he was talking about painting a painting that had an awful lot of emotive content for him as an artist. It was about his son, and I'm kind of paraphrasing the whole thing. I don't want to take away from it, but he's basically saying he had to paint the painting with ice cold water in his veins. He couldn't emote all over the painting every time he picked up the brush because he'd never do the painting. It would be too emotionally draining to paint the painting. Some days he just had to go, I have to just mix this colour, get the colour right and put that there. Does that colour work? Oh no, it needs to be a bit lighter. Okay, do a bit lighter, put it on again. Yeah, that's better. Okay, what about the structure of the arm? Does this arm work? It could be bent a little bit this way. Okay, I'll change it. Excuse me. Just take a slip of coffee. Been talking for 2 hours. So, sorry. Yeah, so it's about you have to have that emotional connection, but you can't be emotionally connected to absolutely every brushstroke because you can't physically put it on like that. You know, if you've got to paint something that is subtle and soft, but the emotive content of the overall piece is something that's dramatic and explosive, you can't paint it with that feeling, because you've got to be considered about that approach. So there's a technical approach. The conceptual narrative is something that you start off with inspiration as a guide as to what you're painting, content-wise, in the picture. Like, for example, I need a certain feeling to the lace up here in this umbrella, and I know that that's not it, but I know where I need to go to get it from, and the qualities I need to look at. And likewise, there's elements, say, for the little chain she's got around her wrist. There's elements in that which need to be a little bit stronger to be in the picture, otherwise you can't quite make out what it is and you don't know what it is and why is it even there. So there's elements that need curating within the bigger picture itself, if that makes sense. So hopefully you've got something out of the conversation today. That's been 2 hours. I normally do 2 hours on Saturday. Next week I'll probably be painting this throughout the week, and you'll see it develop that way. But I will be painting this, literally painting this, next week, next Saturday at 2 o'clock. So you're more than welcome to join us again. Keep on asking the questions, just because I'm painting. If you have a problem with anything at all, if you want to celebrate anything, any good podcasts that you've seen, share them, tell me about them, because I'm interested in them. I'll tell you a few of the ones I've listened to. There's a Jealous Curator, there is the John Dalton Gently Does It, there is Dan Ferguson and Emmanuel, artist. Those two on a Friday, their conversations are brilliant, I love them. The Painting Guide has got some great ones. There's just a couple. There's loads of them out there at the minute, and it's amazing choice to choose from. Definitely listen to them in the background or something, because it will inspire you to go. Even if you disagree with them in what they're saying, it can reaffirm your stance about what it is you want to say. I'm not saying that you have to be absorbing and change everything about yourself. Be flexible, but use your own filter. What's relevant to you, what's not relevant to you, something you disagree with, something you just don't like, that's fine. You're allowed to have your opinion as well. But yeah, if you've got any good sources, let me know. I'm interested. I'm sure everybody else will be as well. So everybody who's joined today, thank you. I know it can be a bit difficult when you're on different formats and things. So Eleanor over on Facebook, and Alex and IP address, and Ben, and who else do we have there? Amanda Sharma over on YouTube. Everybody's joining us. Instagram's blown up today. It's been great to see everybody on there. And Lioart and Breeze873 over on Twitch. Thank you for joining, saying hello, because it's this is much more fun when there's a conversation. When you're doing it by yourself in a studio and there's nobody else and there's nobody else interacting with you, you can feel like you're insane doing this. It's not the easiest thing. I take my hat off to anybody else who does their live broadcasts, because it's not an easy thing, not an easy thing at all. So, but yes, thank you. I shall see you all next week. Okay. So until then, take care. Bye bye. So I've got to say goodbye to everybody else as well. Just switching off Instagram there. Thanks again for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you all again same time next week at 2 o'clock. All right.